Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another YouTube video. So today I'm just going to talk about a bit of technical analysis. I'm going to discuss a few different tokens, including XRP. I'm going to focus quite a lot on XRP because, well, I think we're ready for another leg up. But to start with, let's look at Bitcoin. The reason I've got this solid vertical line in there is because this is the day that we called in our newsletter for Bitcoin bottom, April the 7th. We wrote about that multiple times, and although we were given a rough date, we were using the inverse correlation between the DXY and Bitcoin, and the lag of about 11 weeks to see the DXY weakness play into Bitcoin strength. We used this candle as our breakdown candle here, and then we said 11 weeks further to the future, which would give us the April the 7th date. And it seems so far to be playing out that way, which means we're probably in this sort of period here for Bitcoin if we inverse it. So we're just going to inverse that so I can show you what we're probably going to look at, some sort of structure like this. Then for Bitcoin, we've got all this monetary weakness to flow into Bitcoin incoming. If we just show you, I might compare Bitcoin again. I do this for you quite often on here, so let's just compare Bitcoin. And so what you can see is we've started to see this weakness here now playing to Bitcoin strength. And yes, in the short term, Bitcoin and the DXY were following suit. And we've discussed this before and as to why I think that happened. People were, there was lack of dollar liquidity essentially. So people were going into dollars, but also uncertainty. And then now dollars weakening, and this is where you should see the liquidity play into Bitcoin, because as you can see overall, the trend between Bitcoin and the DXY is often inverse, because when people want more dollars, they sell assets, and then when people want more risk on assets, they sell dollars essentially. They sell the dollar to buy the asset, or sell the asset to buy the dollar. That's essentially how that trade works, with the dollar being the global reserve currency, at least at the minute. The other thing we've been looking at is gold in the short term. When gold's been pulling back, Bitcoin's had its rally. Let's take us to even the short term time frame to show you this on a clearer basis. I'm just going to make the gold chart larger. So from the time that gold fell, I'm not making this really accurate, I'm just showing you the general trend. As gold started to fall, Bitcoin started to spike. Then gold pushed up a little, Bitcoin pulled back. And then gold fell, and then Bitcoin spiked. And then gold fell a little bit more, and Bitcoin is now at these levels. Be looking for gold to potentially bleed out a little bit further. I'm going to take the Bitcoin chart overlay off now. If we look at gold in the weekly time frame, it looks a bit like a reversal candle, at least for the short term. Huge push down, supported by volume. In this last candle, gold got all the way up to 3,500-ish, 3,499, rejected it. And I would expect with this bearish divergence that's formed here for gold, look, we've been discussing this for a while, bearish divergence there, looking at the RSI weekly, potentially going to cross bearish here out of the overbought area, and the stochastic RSI already crossing bearish with the bearish divergence confluence on the stochastic RSI as well. I would expect a pullback on gold, probably into this level. This is the level I would say that we would look for, show you where I would make my best guesstimate as to where we would go. Somewhere into here, maybe just below 3,000, could come as low as 2,800, but that would be significant capital leaving gold and potentially moving into something like Bitcoin. Now, whether that happens quickly or not, I don't know. Quickly, we'd have to see some sort of catalyst, I guess, around the world, like increase of liquidity, probably a deal with China, US. That would make them pretty quick. But slowly, we just see like the continuation of like the trade war and some deals being done with other countries maybe, and some liquidity coming out of some areas, but maybe not from others. That's how I could see us chopping down there. Now, as I said, let's go and look at some crypto charts now. So let's look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's back up at $95,000. We were in ultimate fear down here just like 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we've rallied from that area about 27%. That's only since the 7th of April. So in the last 3 to 4 weeks, we've done a 27% gain on Bitcoin. In the weekly newsletter, we discussed the DXY, we discussed what's next for Bitcoin and altcoins, and I gave you the projection that I thought that Bitcoin could go out towards 180-ish thousand. We've got this liquidity on the liquidity time rate, on the liquidity charts. I'm not going to show you that on Bitcoin, but I'm going to show you it on XRP in a minute, just in the short term. And what I said is, we had these major liquidity buildups above us when we were in this area here. And then when we had this push out, this is in the end of 2024, by the way. like October, November time. So this is just when XRP was about to get ripping as well, and this is why I'm going to talk about XRP in a second. But we had these two major pockets of liquidity above us where people were heavy short on Bitcoin. When we broke above them, we actually went about a further 28%, which took us to our high at about 110k. Right now, our major liquidity pockets would take us up to about 125k. I haven't included like the green liquidity. I've only just gone for the densest area, which is the yellow there. And another 28% above that would take us up to about $165,000, $170,000 Bitcoin. And that's why I've talked about that. I've talked about Bitcoin dominance. I've also talked about ETH because ETH on the liquidity chart looks kind of mad. There's so much liquidity above us up at $4,300-ish, but there's not really much above that. But there's tons there. And as you can see with the Bitcoin chart that I just showed you, when we get red liquidity like that, especially in the daily time frame, it often gets taken. So 80% of the time, technically, it gets taken. I'm not going to show you too much more. That nearly gave you a bit all the alpha there, but you can go and read that. It's completely free, weekly insight, link in the description. But I talk about altcoins in that, a few altcoins that I'm looking at. So going on to XRP, what we can see on the weekly stochastic RSI at the bottom of the screen here, you can see we're coming both a bullish cross and potentially coming out of the oversold area. Last time we got that for the RSI, it was in this period here. Let me just get my circle on. That we were in this period here last time we saw that for the RSI. The stochastic RSI, bullish cross, literally on this week, and then the next week we left the oversold area, and then that's when we started this real journey here. So is that what's about to happen now? Potentially. We have been in this area for a while. If you got in at any of these areas, the leverage zone that I've been talking about, the DCA zone that I was talking about, you should be in a fantastic position in your trades. So well done if you did. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, we're going to look at the XRP liquidity chart here on the 4-hour time frame. What we can see is at about 260, we have our first real major area for liquidity. So I presume we'll probably head up into that as we're starting to chomp this away. And then up at 344, we also have our densest area of liquidity on the 4-hour time frame. We do have a little bit below us still, which could be taken here at, like, say, $2. So you can never rule that out. But as we start to get into these denser areas of liquidity, as I always say, it's like a self-reinforcing cycle where more hype comes in and then more people go short because they think, oh, this is the top. Then they get squeezed out and the price goes higher. More hype comes in, more go short, etc., etc., etc. So that's how we can see a push into these areas like pretty quickly. But also it depends heavily on what Bitcoin's going to do in the short and medium term as well. The last thing I'm just going to touch on here, because I don't think there's too much more to touch on. Actually, three more things. Bitcoin dominance. This is one we've been discussing. We're close to the top of the range. Every single time we've been to the top of this range, we have had a pullback. So that's one thing that we're watching. And we are also seeing, again, a bearish divergence on the Bitcoin dominance in the oversold areas. And these lines are something I discussed in the newsletter. So if you want to understand the analysis on these lines, then that's all in the newsletter as well. But you'll be pretty excited if you start to see what I've talked about there. We're going to look at XLM. If I can quickly find my XLM chart. Here it is. On the 3-day, we did manage to get the candle close above this bull flag. But we have seen that before once here. So I'm watching more for, and the weekly we didn't. Well, the weekly is debatable whether we got the close or not. Like, you could argue that we did, but then you could draw the bull flag in through the wicks of the candles as well. So I'm not going to say yes or no whether we did get the break to the upside on the bull flag. We did get a little bit of volume, but I will be looking for more. So we're really watching what this week does for XLM to see. But it could be too late by the time this week's finished, because you could see a huge green candle if we have returned bullish. You could see it easy. You could see a 50% candle in XLM, and then you've missed a buying opportunity. And we're using that as an indicator for XRP as well. XLM and XRP move in tandem often. XRP is indicating that we could see a move to the upside towards 260 pretty quickly. So if we do get that, you could expect a move from XLM as well. Finally, Flare Networks. Flare is starting to look pretty exciting to me. We've discussed Flare on the monthly time frame as well in the newsletter. So if you want to go and see what I've written about Flare, go and check that out. But large support in volume on a monthly bullish engulfing candle after sweeping the lows is looking pretty nice for a reversal. To be absolutely honest with you, 2 days and 13 hours before we see the close of this candle. let's not count our chickens yet, but let's see what is coming. If we get there, I was looking for a close above the open of the previous month, which would be above 0.01649. It looks like we are on the way to getting that. Be even better if we can get a close above this range here as well, which is above 0.1735. We can get a close above there, then we should be at least starting our first moves in regards to a return to the upside. So I'm going to leave you with that. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, please do hit the like button. Let me know in the comments if I should be watching any of the altcoins that I've missed, and do share it with a friend. All of those things are free to do, and they help me out a lot. Also, go and check out the newsletter, completely free to read. I think we were like 20th trending in crypto last week, so it's fantastic, and thank you to all the readers of that. Or if you'd subscribe to that as well, that's great. It's free. It just means that the email pops into your inbox every week with the newsletter instead of you having to find it each time. Peace up. A-Town down, as Crypto Insight UK would say.